All right, next up is metric modulation, or more
Okay.
accurately, tempo modulation. And a small definition for you.
Sure.
Metric modulation is the shifting of the beat from one rhythmic value to another. For example, simple metric modulation might change the beat from a quarter note to a half note or an eighth note to a 16th. And then just as another example, we have a video from Momo Coco 621.
Okay. All right, let's play this video. She's good. Super clean. Huh. Yeah, man. Yeah, super, super clean for sure. This is a really good example of how metric modulation practice looks. But what's interesting is once you step outside of the funk and prog worlds where they tend to modulate all the way to the new tempo, the new subdivision, really that's not how you use metric modulation in most scenarios. Most of the time when you use metric modulation, it's a lot more subtle than in this video, right? It's not so black and white, all or nothing, where you totally abandon the previous tempo and move to the new one and actually modulate. Most of the practical use of metric modulation is in hinting. That's the word I like to use, where knowing the options that are available in these other modulated tempos, you will hint at them. So when you do practice metric modulation, how she is in this video, it will sound just like that. You completely move and modulate to that new tempo. That is the correct way to practice it. And this was a great example of what that type of practice actually sounds like. But when it comes to using this in your own musical projects, that's very rarely what you do unless you're in a funk or a prog band where you fully move to the new tempo. And it's hard to give really specific examples, but I can tell you one of the most useful modulations to actually study would be 3 against 16, right? And she actually played that in this video. I have a masterclass on this. It's called the Groove Illusions Masterclass. And what it effectively does is takes you through this idea that if you have 16th notes repeating, so 1 E into 2 E into 3 E into 4 E into, what happens if you were to accent or play something on every third note as those 16th notes go by? So 1 E into 2 E into 3 E into 4 E up and 2 E into 3, right? So it's like a sub pulse to the original pulse. And in the case of 316, that takes 3 measures till you get back to the downbeat of 1. So it's 3 completely unique measures that I take you through in this particular masterclass. And it's weird because you can train your foot to do that 316 pulse. You can do it with your hi-hat. You can do it with ghost notes. And so that masterclass is a really good one for exploring that particular metric modulation. And the reality is some are more useful than others. You can do 5 against 16, 7 against 16. And these get more complicated. I think some people would argue that they're all of equal value. Depends on the genre that you're in. In my opinion, some of them are just, I don't want to say not worth your time because you get to decide that part. But some are more musical than others, more like universally accepted than others for sure. So yeah, man, I mean, you got to give it the accent because it's a tool that is so useful. It's just hard to describe the value of metric modulation to people who have never studied it before. But another phrase that's really important to keep in mind is implied metric modulation. So that's just another way of saying hinting, right? That you're hinting at this sub pulse that's available to the listener, but you don't actually have to go there all the way every time. And so this is hard to explain to somebody of why should you study it? You're like, well, listen, you just imply them. It sounds kind of dumber than it is, but it's actually really cool and totally worth your time. So yeah, 316 is where you want to start with that one. And again, if you want to study it with me, Groove Illusions Masterclass on OrlandoDrummer.com. Awesome place a jumping off point for metric modulation.